Good morning. My name is Joel Ward. I'm the president of Red Deer College. I've been here for just about 2 years. It's my second presidency, and I've been involved in post-secondary education in most provinces. Before that, I was an entrepreneur. I was one of the very first folks to have a CompuCenter franchise, so I'm very much interested in technology from the early 80s. Before that, a high school dropout, hitchhiked across the country, did all kinds of things that most people don't like to share, but as you get older you tend to look back fondly on those days as your rebel days. Yeah, I've once heard it said that you know you're getting old when your regrets outnumber your dreams, and as a dreamer and as a futurist, I've always been one who's interested in the future and looking forward, the whole concept of hope. In fact, one of the most important books I think I've ever read is called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And the fourth school of psychotherapy he founded called logotherapy, and it was based on the premise of hope. And as a futurist, as a technologist, for me it's always been about hope, looking forward to something better and different. Now, for a very long time, as I advanced in my career, I realized that it was always about me. And it took a very long time in my life to realize that that satisfaction in life, that joy in life, that delight in life really comes from being outside of yourself. And it took to about 50 before I realized that fact, that the world didn't revolve around me, that I could enjoy the success of others, in fact take pride in the success of others in whatever little role that one can play in that. And I think that it takes a long time for a person to realize that fact. And in a culture where it's completely centered on self, it goes contrary to that view, and I think we really need to start thinking about the whole sense of being a volunteer and reaching outside of yourself to make a difference in the world. The singularity, what is it and why is it important? I'm fascinated by this actually, because in some way, wouldn't we all like to live forever? And how do you download your consciousness into something that can be stored and then reinstalled somewhere else? And so as the singularity starts to develop, and even in today's society we have a bit of that with artificial knees and artificial hips, and soon they're projecting the ability to download one's experiences and consciousness and store it forever and perhaps reinstall it into a different entity. So it brings up all kinds of science fiction imaginings, whether it's Sarah Connor's Chronicles and the Terminator, or whether it's I, Robot from Isaac Asimov. But it's really quite a fascinating concept. When does humanity end and technology begin, and what's a combination of those two things that might evolve the human species into something a little bit better? Quite frankly, at my age, I don't know if I want to live forever. Quite frankly, I'm having a difficult time remembering a lot of things. But it's kind of interesting, the whole concept of being able to at least store memories and have access to them at appropriate times. It's frightening on the one side, but on the other hand, it's actually quite exhilarating trying to imagine that you could replay every moment of your life. What happens, though, is that as we age now, our memories fade, our recollections of events tend to be sanitized a bit, shined a little bit, stored in ways where certain fragments of that memory are gone, and quite frankly we start to remember things that then become the truth as opposed to the reality of what actually happened. I'm excited about the prospects of human machine combination and what that might look like at the end. It's kind of frightening. I probably won't be around when it happens, but it's certainly, if you speculate, it's really kind of interesting. So I've often been asked why I became interested in the future, and I think about that a lot. And as a young boy growing up in a very large family, very poor family, with adoptive parents, it was always interesting for me to wonder. I was always wondering about what a potential future could have been if I had different parents, for example, or if I knew who my father was. And I always imagined a different future based on that. And so I started to think a lot about what the future might look like and how I might be involved in it. And it became very personal for me. I became very interested in science fiction. I became very interested in fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and then I started to read futurist material like Alvin Toffler's Future Shock and Naisbitt's Megatrends, and these kinds of things really interested me because I was always hopeful of something better. and different. Star Trek, the original series of Star Trek. Just imagining what could possibly be in the future. And so that really sparked my interest, and it caused a sense of what I call now in my leadership style, mindfulness. It's always about looking at everything, not missing anything, not accepting the status quo. And so if I'm walking down the street, I'm imagining or I'm looking and saying, what could that be 10 years from now? Or if we did it differently, what would it look like? Or if we made this decision, how could it impact people and their future? And so I always think that if a spaceship landed and asked for a volunteer, I'd be the first guy in the front of that line, because I want to see what's beyond what we already live in. And so as a president of a college, I take those qualities and I apply them every single day to the job that I have. And I try to inspire people to look forward, to think differently, to imagine a better and a different future. And whether that's the use of educational technology in the classroom, how that could enhance student learning, whether it's the design of curriculum that is more future thinking, anything that they can do to imagine a different outcome and to improve in everything that we do. That's really my passion and interest in the future. And I guess it's about hope too, because you think the future, you always tend to believe that the future is going to be more hopeful than today. And I'll never give that up, even though we live in a society where pessimism prevails. As a futurist, I'm always hopeful of improvement for our society and for the people on this planet. And to me, it's the real paradox of being a futurist. On the one hand, there's the thought that individual greed trumps common good every single time. And at the end of the day, you're always going to make a decision that's going to improve your own life rather than your ability to improve the life of others. And contrast that to the view of a futurist who really wants to think about a better future for everyone and what their particular contribution could be to make that happen. I'd like to make the contrast between two things that I think are really important for a futurist. One is mindfulness. And it seems paradoxical on the surface that mindfulness is really about being in the present, seeing everything as you need to see it, being open to change and to be open to new things, and to use your eyes and your spirit and your mind to imagine the present. And the paradox of that is a futurist is really focused on what might be, and mindfulness is about what is, but it's actually mindfulness is about what is now but what could be later. And for me, being a leader is about being focused on the future, driven by hope, and imagined with mindfulness every single day. Whether it's walking from one place to another and being mindful of everything that's going on around you, by observing, by a willingness to be open to possibility. And being open to possibility really is what defines the future.